Let's just start. PM's been elsewhere this morning, talking. What's he said and what does it mean?
Well, he has been elsewhere talking this morning, and he's setting up the day, really, for this summit after a weekend of frantic diplomacy in which he has spoken to President Trump twice. He's hosted Zelensky, and he is reiterating this morning that the UK wants to act as a bridge between the US and Europe. There were a couple of things. In terms of the substance of what he said, the thing that was significant was he said that the UK, having had discussions with President Macron of France, President Trump and President Zelensky, that the UK and France and one or two others are now going to work with Ukraine to put together a ceasefire plan, which they are then going to take to the US. So that's the substance of what he has said. In terms of the atmospherics of what he has said, obviously people watched the White House situation on Friday night in astonishment, totally bewildering, seeing a wartime leader treated in that way by the country that is supposed to be the closest ally of both the UK and a supporter of Europe. And so he was asked a number of times about his response to that. He was shown the footage and he simply said, "I felt uncomfortable. Nobody wants to see that." That was his line to take. He kept going back to that line and he would not go further than that. And the reason is that he just doesn't want to poke the bear. He has had meticulous planning going into his meeting with Trump on Thursday. He understands that he wants to do it behind closed doors, and he is just not prepared to provoke Trump. And some people watching might find that frustrating, that they want him to speak out on it in a way, if you like, that he did when Elon Musk attacked his minister, Jess Phillips, but he's just not going to do that. And when that was put to him, he said, look, some people go to Twitter, I pick up the phone, and my decision was to try and get this thing back on track. And so that is where we are now, and we are having, 17 European leaders come in. Prime Minister Meloni of Italy will be in Downing Street this morning, and then they will all move to Lancaster House, a great state house, very grand house in the centre of London, and they will continue these negotiations.
What do you expect to come out of this afternoon?
Well, what's been a bit tricky about all of it, Trevor, is that the government are just not giving readouts at the moment on calls. I think it has been so difficult and tense, having had Macron and then the Prime Minister, if you like, teeing up what they thought would be this positive meeting with Zelensky. They were meant to sign the minerals deal, then they were going to come to Lancaster House and talk about security offerings that the Europeans could make that they hoped would be backed up with the security guarantees from the US. And it all blew up, didn't it, on Friday in quite astonishing fashion. I've never seen anything like it. But in terms of where are we now, a government source was saying to me this morning that the aim is to get back to the table, get Zelensky back to the table to do the deal, point one. And then they want to try and get European leaders to stop talking about what they're going to do and put some hard money and commitments in, step up on defence spending. That will be a criteria of any Trump backstop, if it comes at all. And then they also need a plan B, which is preparing for a world with no US security guarantee for Europe when it comes to Ukraine. You know, they're going to have an alternative as well. So I think that's what we might see this afternoon.
Before I come to the panel, all of us sort of envy you being able to be there in the Oval Office, most famous political office in the world, and see... And then the day after, be able to watch this encounter. How did it feel, I suppose, is what I'm really trying to get at, being there?
The first thing I say about being there is that you have to remember that when Zelensky was there or Keir Starmer was there, it's Trump's office, it's intimate. There's a certain number of the press pack that can go into the room because you simply cannot fit everyone in, point one. So it's intimate, it's his space. And it's a place in where those top of bilaterals where you sit and chat. Now, typically, a president might do a couple of comments and then everyone's ushered out, and then they get down to serious business. Trump treats it as a press conference where he is totally dominant. Yeah. And I think that part of the way in which Starmer handled it was he barely spoke for about 40 minutes when we were in there with President Trump as he held court and asked us for a series of questions that are informal as well. So it's hard to ask a really tough, spiky question in an informal, you're in someone's home type vibe. But the contrast between how he was with Starmer, who almost physically made himself quite small, you know, he crossed his hands, he sat to the side, to what exploded with Zelensky was quite something to see. And I wasn't expecting it, not least because every time Trump was asked about Zelensky on the Thursday with Keir Starmer, he had nothing but warmth for Zelensky. Yeah. He refused to repeat the idea he thought he was a dictator. Yes. And so it seemed to be genuinely all teed up for the mineral deal. And the number 10 were cock a hoop coming back from that trip. And so to watch it just disintegrate into what was really unpleasant berating of Zelensky, it was awful to see, really.